In this session, basically, I will just give you some idea about the optical access networks, and I hope you must have some idea about the optical communication and networks. So I will be just giving some basic idea about the optical network, and then we'll move to some advanced optical network architectures. Basically, what are the current challenges in the optical network architectures? Like, basically, the first and very important topic is the energy efficiency. As a lot of applications are increasing day by day, a lot of ICT infrastructure is developing, moving. So basically, the energy consumption is also increasing day by day, and we have the limited resources. So that's why we have to decrease the energy consumption. In spite of the reduction in the energy consumption, there are several other challenges like the reliability of the architecture of the network. So suppose if someone is using some internet services from some specific service provider, okay, and for some particular time instant, if the internet is not coming, then our life is basically somewhat stopping, or we are not able to work. So that's why it is irritating, and we are not getting what we are paying for. So basically, the reliability is also an important issue, and then definitely the cost effectiveness. If the cost of the services are very high, then basically it is also not good. So this, as a service provider points of view, he or she must provide the very good services and at very cheap price. Okay, so I will give you just some idea, and then there is another important topic, that is latency. So suppose one want to transmit the data from one end to another end, or suppose two people want to communicate with each other, then the latency of the communication must also be small. So we'll just discuss some architectures, what are the possibilities that we can do in the optical access networks. Definitely, I hope it will be very beneficial for you in your research areas. And someone of you are working in this optical network, then you will just definitely get benefited. And many of you, I think, are trying to switch or start working towards this very latest and effective area. So you can also start working on it. Okay, so my talk will be based on the flexible and energy efficient optical access networks. So basically, the flexible means at this point, the optical networks or the services must be reliable, the services must be switchable, or the bandwidth is scalable. And suppose in future, the number of users are increasing or the bandwidth demand is increasing, then basically we are able to scale the network. Okay, so the flexible means like this, not it is some kind of static. Once we have designed whatever we have designed, it should not be static. It must be scalable, compatible with the legacy network, what has been previously deployed. And energy efficient, as its name suggests, the services must be energy efficient. Okay. So the contents, so this is the brief layout of my talk basically. So I'll just give you some introduction, or you can say the motivation why basically we require the energy efficient optical access network architectures. Then I'll just give you some idea about the optical access networks. Okay, so what are the possibilities, what are the multiplexing techniques like the time division multiplexing, or nowadays a very important multiplexing technique used for providing the very high data rate services, that is the wavelength division multiplexing. So then we'll give you the idea about the TDM optical networks and then the WDM optical networks. Then we'll have some idea of what happens, what are the challenges or limitations of the TDM PON passive optical network, basically the optical network which does not use any active component, okay, at the central office or at the user end. And then we'll have what happens, what are the benefits if we just try to combine the time division multiplexing with wavelength division multiplexing. Okay, then we'll see some very interesting architectures, advanced, flexible, resilient, bandwidth scalable optical access network architectures. And then the next part we'll discuss on some direct inter-ONU communication techniques. So inter-ONU communication techniques, let me just give you some idea at this point, then we'll discuss in detail. So ONU is the optical networking unit, or we can say it is just denoting the user. Okay, so normally what happens in the conventional architectures, the one user send its data. Suppose one user want to communicate with another user, then he or she send its data to the central office first, and then central office then remodulate and recirculate it to the destined user. So basically in this case, what happens, the lot of latency will be there as from one user to the central office, and then the central office to the another user, and the bandwidth is also consumed at the user side as well as the central office side, and also the power is all required at the user side as well as the central office side. So is there any possible mechanism so that one user can directly communicate with the another user to gain these benefits? Okay, so basically introductions in this, I'll try to talk about the optical access networks, and I'll discuss on two ends basically. So one can say the service provider end, that is the optical line terminal or OLT that is located at the central office, and another is the optical networking unit that is located at the user side or user end. So we'll discuss some architectures at OLT and then an ONU. So basically at OLT side, we'll try to give some idea or utilize the resources efficiently. Okay, so by using the resources efficiently, we can get the reliability of the services, we can get the energy efficiency, we can get the cost efficiency, as well as we can get the bandwidth efficiency. Similarly, if by designing some particular architecture or mechanism and providing one user to communicate directly with another user without intervening the central office or OLT, we can achieve, will try to achieve the reduced transmission latency, we will try to reduce the transmission latency, the efficient use of bandwidth edge. If one user is directly communicating with another user, then we can say the data which is transmitted from the user to the central office and then central office to the another user. So basically 2 times. So one we have to modulate in the upstream direction and then in the downstream direction. So now by the direct communication, one has to modulate the data only once. So basically we can definitely save the bandwidth, and also again the energy efficiency, reliability, and transmission security. So we'll discuss how these things are achieving. So need for energy efficiency. So at present, basically the traditional energy resources such as the hydrocarbon energy, nuclear energy, fossil fuels, etc., basically provide the most of the energy. Okay, so but what happens, these kind of energy resources are limited in nature, and these energy resources are not renewable. So suppose if the energy consumption is increasing with its own pace, and nowadays from the last 6 months the energy consumption has increased a lot due to the lots of ICT applications, due to the high bandwidth demands. So basically, if we will not try to do some regions, so it may be like we can use the renewable energy resources, or we can design some technologies or components that can use the low internet energy. So if we will not try to do work on this, then basically in distant future we will not able to provide the sufficient energy resources for the various applications. Okay, so basically this figure is somewhat older, but it will give us some idea. So what kind of energy resources are used? So you can see only the 17% of the total energy consumption in worldwide are the renewable energy resources. Okay, so as the renewable energy resources have certain limitations, these are not omnipresent. Okay, so previously the wind energy somewhat was much familiar or famous, but it is not so much successful for converting the renewable energy for the usual type. Okay, or we have the limitations as we have we have to install some kind of plants or mechanism to get the renewable energy, wind energy in the deserts. Okay, but we are limited. So now lots of work is going on the solar cells. So definitely we are going in the right direction and we are achieving a lot. And if the efficiency of the solar cells increased a lot, then there may be some case that the cars or some of the automobile industry will use the solar cells as the thin film on the roof of the vehicles. Maybe possible. Okay, so but I will not talk on the other field. I'll just concentrate my talk to the ICT. Okay, so there are some other fields like the natural gases, coals, oils, but all are limited. Okay, and if the use of ICT is increasing, the energy consumption is also increasing, and definitely if energy is consumed, then some another energy must be released. So what is released? That is the large amount of carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide gases. So basically that are very harmful for our friendly environment. So we don't want to pollute our environment, and we are focusing to save our friendly environment. Okay, so what we can do? So basically there are two options. So first one is the renewable energy resources should be harnessed to replace the traditional energy resources. So lots of work is going on already, and as I have already told you that the solar cells is one possible way. So the people are working on it, and simultaneously what we need to do, the second choice is to design, to develop the low energy components, equipments, technologies or protocol, so that it will reduce the energy consumption as well as reduce the emission of the environmental hazardous gases and save our environment. So basically I will focus on this second point. So basically there is some motivation to design the energy efficient optical network architectures that will not only reduce the energy consumption but also save our friendly environment. Okay, so it is some idea how the energy consumption is doing in the ICT. ICT here is the information and communication technology. So whatever we are using the smart technologies, that comes under the ICT. Okay, so for the energy efficient network, there are some factors. So what we can do to make the efficient ICT infrastructure. So basically, as I already told you, we can harness the renewable energy resources as much as possible. We can use the remote monitoring. So basically, like by installing the servers at the remote locations where the renewable energy is possible, then by accessing remotely, we can save some kind of energy, or we can use the renewable energy where the renewable energy is not possible. We can design the efficient network by properly dimensioning and planning, by efficient network processing or effective efficient electronic equipment uses. So like there are two kinds of uses. One is all optical processing, another is OEO, that is optical to electronic and then electronic to optical. So basically this conversion also consumes lots of energy. Okay, so if all the processing is in optical domain, then certainly lots of energy can be saved. And then one important parameter is the efficient access network design. So basically we will concentrate on this efficient access network design. Okay, so there is some data basically. So from the data of 2009, the energy consumption in ICT was approximately 8% of the total energy consumption. And now it has increased to approximately 15% by now, and it is continued to increase at a very rapid rate. So basically we have to worry, we have to design, we have to work to reduce the energy consumption to save our environment. And especially this telecommunication sector or the broadband services accounts nearly 4 to 6% of the global energy consumption. And now due to this work from home environment or lots of smart devices, smart things, internet of things, basically this 4 to 6% is also increasing. So it may be 10 to 12% very soon. What happens? It is hanged. Yes. So now, what is optical access networks or the passive optical networks? So passive optical network basically upon here the optical network which uses the passive components only, the network which doesn't use any active component. Okay. So in this case, there is one optical line terminal OLT that is located at the central office, or we can say at the server side from where the downstream data is transmitted towards the user. So users are located at this site. So there are when users and user 1, user 2, user 3 are indicated in this case. So in the time division multiplexing TDM-PON, what we do, so we use only one passive component at the remote node or in the mid of the network. So this is the optical fiber on which the data is transmitted, and then one optical splitter or power splitter is inserted. So basically whatever the optical signal is coming, this optical splitter will distribute to its N ports. So suppose this is optical splitter of maybe 1 cross 2, it may be 1 cross 4, 1 cross 8, 1 cross 16, 1 cross 32, etc. Whatever. Okay. So it will just distribute the data to its all the output ports, and then its output ports are connected directly to the users. Okay, so let's say user 1 is connected to the port 1, user 2 is connected to port 2, user 3 is connected to port 3, etc. like this. Okay, so these users are getting the services. So at optical line terminal, let's say we are transmitting only one wavelength, lambda 1. Okay, so this lambda 1 will be distributed to its all ports. Now, how this user 1, 2, 3 can fetch the data or can access the data? So there is some TDMA, time division multiple access mechanism. So at particular time, this user 1 will fetch the data or use or access the data. At some another time, user 2 will access the data. At another time, user 3 will access the data. Okay, so it is very simple, very cost efficient, and also the power efficient. How it is power efficient? So suppose there are 4 users, let's say 32 users. Okay, in this case, up to 32, this optical splitter is there. So there are 32 users. So by using only one transmitter at the optical line terminal or at central office, we can serve all these users. But what is the problem? So advantage of this TDM-PON is that any wavelength source can serve all the ONUs available in the network. It means only one wavelength source or one transmitter is able to serve all the users available in the network. And it utilizes the low cost optical combiner or this power splitter. This power splitter is basically very cheap. So the cost of this network is also cheap, but there are certain challenges. So challenges is the power budget. It is one of the main challenge that basically will not allow us to use the large port number optical splitter. So basically what happens when we increase the size of the optical splitter, let's say 1 cross 64 or 1 cross 128, then depending on the number of output ports, the insertion loss of the optical splitter increases, and this insertion loss basically is given by approximately 3.5 log of 2n. So why this 3.5? Because if you just consider 1 cross 2 optical splitter, okay, that is ideal. So for 1 cross 2, suppose we are providing some power and there are 2 ports on which the power has to be divided. So it means the power will be half at each port. Okay, so ideally it is 3 log of 2n. So now in this case n is 2, so 3 log of 2 and 2, so it is 1. So now the power is divided by 3 dB. 3 dB means the power is divided by half. But nothing is ideal. Things are practical, so that's why we have to consider this 3.5 log of 2n. So for 1 cross 2 power splitter, the insertion loss is approximately 3.5 dB, and as the port numbers increases, n increases, the insertion loss increases. So for servicing large number of users, we cannot use the single optical splitter. If we increase the size of the splitter, then the insertion loss will be there. More insertion loss will be there, and this user 1 or user 2 or any particular user will receive the very weak signal or very less power. So what happens if the signal is weak? So each user or detector, let's say I'm talking about the detector, so the optical detectors are the pin diode or the photodiode. So it has its own sensitivity. So basically the detector will not be able to detect 2 weak signals. Okay, so if the sensitivity of the detector is, let's say it is minus 30 dBm, so if the signal that is less than minus 30 dBm, the detector will treat the signal as noise, so it will not give the satisfactory performance. Okay, so we cannot increase the number of ports too much, and less security. So what happens in case of the TDM on less security? As we are transmitting the data for all the available users inside the network at a single wavelength. Okay, so the data is basically broadcasted. So we can say we are transmitting the data for some particular user, then basically another users may also able channel capacity. So as you the channel needs in the TDM PON. So now
Okay, sir, we are not getting your voice.
AWG array waveguide grating basically for the multiplexing and demultiplexing purpose. So let's say n wavelengths are applied to this AWG or WDM mux. So this mux will consolidate all these wavelengths to this port, and the series of the wavelengths will come to this point, and then it will be again distributed. And so one wavelength will come at this point. So let's say it is lambda 1, lambda 2 here, lambda 3 here, lambda n here. So the particular user is using a separate wavelength. Okay, so now What are the advantages of this WDM PON? So multiple wavelengths are transmitted simultaneously, thus provide very high bandwidth. The insertion losses are very low, and the security is very high, as for a particular user, a separate wavelength is used, so the wavelength is not shared. Okay, so the security, transmission security is very high in the WDM PON. It has some challenges also. So challenge means it has the high cost, as the fabrication or designing of AWG is somewhat complex. It is somewhat costlier, and it is also not flexible. Not flexible means, suppose what happens if this transmitter one is failed, or this module is failed due to any particular reason, then this user one will not able to receive the services until this transmitter is not recovered. Okay, what happens, suppose if we are using the TDM PON, and let's say there are two transmitters used at the central office, so each transmitter is able to serve any user. Okay, so if one transmitter is failed, then the services may be continued on the another transmitter. But in this case, suppose if we want to transmit the data by transmitter 2, then transmitter 2 will only send the data to user 2. So basically this is somewhat, we can say, the static. It is not flexible. Okay, so then what we can do, we can have some hybrid TDM WDM PON to basically gain the benefits of individual multiplexing technology and to avoid the limitations of the individual multiplexing technology. Okay, so let's say we have some central office OLT, and from here we are transmitting the 4 wavelengths, lambda 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and we have now 2 remote nodes. So earlier we have only 1 remote node. So basically in this case the remote node is this one, and in this case the remote node is this one. Now there are 2 remote nodes. So one remote node is this one AWG, and another remote node is this, so power splitter. Okay, so now we can connect AWG at this point, we can connect power splitter at this point, we can also connect power splitter at this point, and we can connect the AWG at this point, or we can have all AWGs. So we'll analyze next few slides. So basically what happens, so just see. So suppose there are 132 users. Okay, we want to serve 132 users. So if we use only one power splitter, 1 plus 132, then the insertion losses will be very high, and the receiver sensitivity will be very low, or we can say the receiver will not be able to receive whatever the strength of the signal is required to detect the signal, so it will not give the satisfactory performance. So let at remote node 1 the AWG is used. Okay, and at remote node 2 the power splitter is used. So 4 wavelengths are transmitted. So this AWG will demultiplex. So one wavelength will come at this point, lambda 2 will come at port 2, lambda 3 will come at port 3, and so on. So now this one wavelength is now serving these 32 users. This wavelength, 4th wavelength, is serving these 32 users. So similarly, we can serve the 132 users by using the 4 wavelengths instead of 1 wavelength. So basically, for hybrid PON, as the insertion loss for pure TDM PON is high, for pure WDM PON is low, and for hybrid PON it is moderate. Security for pure TDM is low, as for 132 users there is only 1 wavelength. Okay, but in the case of hybrid PON, the security is moderate. How it is moderate? So let's say this is one group, this is another group. So the signal transmitted on lambda 1 wavelength will be accessible only to this group. So basically other 3 groups will not be able to access the lambda 1. And similarly, the lambda 4, these 3 groups, ODN 1, 2, 3 will not be able to access the lambda 4. So security will be basically the moderate. Okay, flexibility in this case, basically it is partial. The resource sharing is also possible, and it is partial. How it is partial basically? So as we have 4 transmitters and one transmitter is shared with 32 users. Okay, so it is also possible. And wavelength requirement, so for pure TDM only one wavelength is able to suffice for any number of users if we are able to match the receiver sensitivity. So if we are using the pure TDM in this case, so at this case, at this remote node power splitter, at this remote node also power splitter, then basically only one wavelength will be sufficient, but the losses will be very high, and there may be a case that the user will not be able to detect the signal properly. Or what we need to do, we need to transmit the very large signal strength at the optical line terminal or at central office, and we cannot increase the signal strength at the transmitter again due to some certain reasons. So one reason is obviously due to the energy consumption. As we are increasing the transmitted energy, it will consume more energy. And the another reason, so as another reason is basically we are having the limited energy resources. Okay, so now there are some cost and energy efficient multiplexing techniques. Okay, so this is the 2 remote node architecture as we have already discussed in the previous slide. So let's say the remote node is one is 1 cross m and remote node 2 is 1 cross n. So there is the possibility that we can use at remote node 1 the power splitter or AWG, and at remote node 2 the power splitter and AWG. So basically there will be 4 combinations: power splitter, power splitter, power splitter, AWG, AWG, power splitter, AWG, AWG. Okay, so let's say we have some certain environmental conditions or network conditions. Okay, the conditions may be the number of users. So suppose for particular network we have the number of users 32, 64, 128 and 256. So we can have the 1 cross m basically this remote node 1 and 1 cross n basically this remote node 2. Okay, so 1 cross m we can have 8 MH8 and NH4, MH16 NH4, MH16 NH8, 32 8. Okay, so now we can use the AWG or we can use the power splitter, and the cost of basically the AWG or power splitter is approximately given by this. For AWG it is 500 plus 70 log of 2x in dollar, and for power splitter it is 200 plus 50 log of 2x. Okay, so the cost of the AWG or power splitter can be determined by for a specific number of ports. So basically ports, this x is basically 8, 4, 16, 4, 13, sorry, 16, 8, 32, 8. So the cost for a splitter for 4 cross 4 it is $300, for 8 port 350, for 16 ports $400 and $450. It is calculated by this formula, and for AWG it is 640, 710, 780, 850. Okay, so we can definitely see here the cost of AWG is much higher as compared to the splitter. So for different network conditions, 32 users, 64, 128 and 256. So this is for this is for 32, this is for 64. So if we are using the TDM at both the remote nodes, or we are using the power splitter at remote node 1 as well as the remote node 2, then the cost of the 2 remote nodes will range approximately from $600 to $800. And if we are using the remote node 1 as power splitter and remote node 2 as the WDM, then the cost will increase somewhat higher, and it will be approximately $1,000 to the 1180. And if we use the WDM at remote node 1 and power splitter at remote node 2, then also the cost will be higher. It will be higher than WDM. Why? Basically because this port report of remote node 1 is higher. Okay, and if we are using the AWG, costlier AWG or WDM at both the remote nodes, then the cost will be higher. So if we are using WDM, then the cost of the network is higher. So we have to basically optimize the cost as well as the energy efficiency, energy consumption. And what about the energy consumption? The energy consumption is much lower in this TDM PON. Why? Because so basically this is the required power budget. So let's say some particular network has the detectors that has some particular amount of receiver sensitivity, and by considering the fiber losses and some extra safety margin, then as the losses for the TDM PON is high, so the required power budget for the TDM PON is low. Okay, and as the length increases, then the fiber losses increases and the losses increases. So in this case also the power budget must be very high, otherwise we will not be able to get the signals. And this is the required number of wavelengths. So for TDM PON, only one wavelength may serve all the users, as the power splitter distribute to its all ports. Okay, so as the transmitter point of view, this TDM PON is cost efficient and energy efficient. And for WDM PON, pure WDM PON, the number of wavelengths required will basically depend on the number of users. Okay, so for this case, let's say 8 and 4, 32 users, and we are using the pure WDM, then 32 users will be 32 transmitters will be required, and similarly it will be 16 cross 4, 16 cross 8, or 13 cross 8. Okay, so now for cost wise as well as the energy consumption wise, we need to use the TDM PON or pure TDM PON, but the energy consumption is the insertion loss is much higher in the pure TDM PON, so we can't use this set all the time. Okay, so what we will do, so basically depending on the data rate, so as the data rate increased, the receiver sensitivity decreases. Okay, so depending on the transmitted data rate and available receiver sensitivity, we can manage and we can select the proper combination. So the best multiplexing techniques can be given as we will try to transmit with pure TDM if it is satisfying the power budget. Okay, so basically there are 3 points. So one is if the number of users are less, then basically the insertion losses will be low. So then the TDM PON may be suitable. Another is if the transmission distance is low. In this case also the TDM PON will be suitable. But as the distance increases, then losses will increase. And losses will increase, then definitely we have to migrate from TDM to WDM PON. So for 32 users, if we are increasing the distance, then TDM PON is also working in only one wavelength. It's sufficient. And if the number of users is increased to 64, then for 20 kilometer or for 40 kilometer, the TDM PON is sufficient. But for 60 kilometer, basically the insertion losses are high, then we have to migrate towards the WDM. So in this case, the TDM WDM multiplexing technique will be very good. It will be cost efficient. It will be the energy efficient. And similarly, let's say in this case, we are transmitting the data at 10 Gbps. 10 Gbps means the receiver sensitivity is low, at least 2 to 3 dB low. Okay, so we just gone with 2 to 3 dB more losses, and if the number of users are large, and the distance is also large, then basically we don't have any choice. We have to use the WDM PON. So basically, depending on the number of users, the transmission distance, or the bandwidth, we can use the best multiplexing techniques, migrating from the pure TDM to the pure WDM. So this is the basically the reciprocal power versus the log BER curve. So as for 10 Gbps and for 1 cross 10 to the power minus 9, let's say for 10 to the power minus 9 BER, for 10 Gbps we require approximately minus 34 dBm of power, and for the same BER performance at 2.5 Gbps we required approximately 36 dBm of power, and for 1 Gbps we require approximately minus 38 dBm of power. So basically this power difference is nothing but it is the difference in the receiver sensitivity. Okay, or we can say if we are transmitting at 1 Gbps, then we can tolerate approximately 5 dB more losses as compared to this 10 Gbps. So now, up to now, what we are doing, we have seen the transmission of the data at only one data rate. Okay, either we can transmit at 10 Gbps or we can transmit at 1 Gbps or 10 Gbps. Okay, but as we know, the traffic demand or the bandwidth demand, it's not homogeneous in nature. It is basically fluctuating, and let's say at some particular time instance, like in night, 11 p.m. or 12 or 1 a.m., we may have very less traffic, and in the office hours we may have the very high traffic data. Okay, so it is not always advised to use the 10 Gbps or the high bandwidth line at all the time. Can you see more so the more cost? Okay, so basically in this case we'll try to have some idea about quality. So basically, so one different depending on the model is if it's in WDM TDM. Yes. Okay, so let's say we have used one AWG at central office. So basically what happens in conventional WDM PON? So in WDM PON we have one AWG at central office and another AWG at remote node, and basically this central office AWG multiplex the wavelengths, and then remote node AWG basically demultiplex the wavelengths to its all the output ports. Okay, so let's say we have m wavelengths, so lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3, lambda 4 to lambda m will come at this port, and m and n both are equal, let's say. Okay, so then lambda 1, lambda 2 and lambda m will distribute it to its output ports. So basically one wavelength for one optical distribution network, as it is the hybrid PON. So this provides the WDM PON, and this 1 cross K coupler is nothing but it is the splitter. Okay, so it provides the TDM PON. So that's why it becomes the hybrid PON. Okay, so for these K users, this lambda 1 wavelength is there. Okay, but now what happens if this lambda 1 is failed? Then it will create the problem. And let's say lambda 1 is modulated at 10 Gbps. We have some setup for 10 Gbps modulation. Okay, now the user demands at some particular time instant decreases. then basically we can't do nothing, but we have to transmit the signal only at 10 Gbps while they are demanding only 1 Gbps or 2.5 Gbps. Okay, so we can say this is the wastage of the resources. So what we can do in one advanced network architecture. So this is the central office AWG and this is the remote node AWG. Okay, it is M cross 1, it is 1 cross n. But now what is changed? So the number of this M is twice as compared to the n. So basically we can say the number of input ports for the central office AWG is twice as compared to the number of output ports of the remote node AWG. Okay, so now half of the transmitters, in this case transmitter TRX1, TRX2 up to TRXN, half of the transmitters are modulated at 10 Gbps and remaining half of the modulators from TRXN plus 1, TRXN plus 2 up to TRXM or 2n, these half are modulated at 1 Gbps. Okay, and we have used two interleavers. One is at this point for 10 Gbps line and another at this point for 1 Gbps line. Okay, and the signals or the interleavers are connected to the power splitter or optical splitter, and then these are again connected to the interleavers at this point. Okay, so now we'll explain the next slides. So basically what happens, so let's say 10 Gbps line, it is transmitting the 193.1, 193.3, 193.5 and 193.7 terahertz of wavelength. Okay, it is these wavelengths are modulated, the black wavelengths are modulated at 10 Gbps and the red wavelengths are modulated at 1 Gbps. So it is 193.9, 194.1, 194.3 and 194.5 terahertz. Okay, so now what happens, this 193.1 will come here, 3 will come here, 193.5 will come here, 193.7 will come here, 193.9 will come here. So all these 8 wavelengths will be multiplexed and combined and will come here. So here this wavelength stream, that is 193.1357 9, 194.135. Okay, and now we have 1 cross 4 AWG at this point. Okay, so now what happens, as the spacing, wavelength spacing of this AWG or the port spacing of this AWG is 200 GHz, and the wavelength spacing or port spacing for this AWG is also 200 GHz, and the center frequency of this is 193.1 terahertz. Okay, so now what happens, these out of these wavelengths, so 193.1 wavelength will come at this point. Basically this is due to the cyclic property of the AWG. Then 193.3 wavelength will come at port 2, 193.5 will come at port 3, 193.7 will come at port 7, and due to the cyclic property again it will start repeating its ports. So 193.9 will come at this point, 194.1, 194.3, 194.5. So each output port is receiving 2 wavelengths basically. So the black wavelength, that is modulated at 10 Gbps, and the red wavelength which is modulated at 1 Gbps. Okay, so let's say this is one optical distribution network, ODN1. So this splitter is providing the services to 32 users. Okay, so what happens, so let's say if the users are demanding the 10 Gbps wavelength, then this transmitter will be on and this transmitter will be off, and at some particular time instant, if the bandwidth demand is reduced below a certain threshold, or let's say 1 Gbps transmitter will be sufficient, so in that case this transmitter will be off and this transmitter will be on. So basically we can switch, we are able to just switch the services from 10 Gbps to 1 Gbps and vice versa without any changing in the network. Okay, and similarly for optical distribution network 2, 3 and 4, and each network, and suppose if this 193.9 transmitter is failed due to any particular reason, okay, if the services are continued at 193.9 wavelength and it is failed due to any particular reason, then services will be resumed just by switching on or starting this 193.1 wavelength. So we are getting the reliability, we are not having any service disruption in this case. Definitely there will be some switching latency, but it will not be significant. We can tolerate it. Okay. So basically, for this particular architecture, we are getting the reliability. Reliability means reliability against the transmitter failure, or we can say the link failure. Suppose this particular link is failed, then what happens? Due to this link, the services will be continued. Okay. If this particular transmitter is failed, then what happens? The services will be continued at this point. Or at some particular point, let's say the traffic demand is increasing, or in future, due to the network scaling, let's say the bandwidth demand is increased, then what we can do? We can continue the services on 10 Gbps as well as 1 Gbps simultaneously. Okay, so it can provide the services reliably, cost efficiently, energy efficiently. Why energy efficient? As at 1 Gbps, it will require the less energy, the receiver sensitivity will be high, the nonlinear effects will be low. And now let's say there are certain number of users in the network. Okay, and we need to transmit the same data to all the available users. Then basically what we need to do, either we have to transmit the same data from all the transmitters. Let's say transmitter 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 4 transmitters will be engaged, 4 line cards will be used, or some racks will be used to provide the supply to the transmitters and to provide the power to the transmitters. So it will consume the very high power consumption. So what we can do in this interesting architecture, so there are 200 gigahertz interlevers, as you can see. Okay, one is connected to the 10 Gbps line and another is connected to the 1 Gbps line. So let's say we have to broadcast the data at 10 Gbps. Then what we'll do, we'll just tune the transmitted wavelength by 100 gigahertz of transmitter 1. Okay, so now instead of transmitting 193.1 wavelength, it will transmit the 193.2 terahertz wavelength. Okay, so now the main function of this 100 gigahertz transmitter is to just provide the even number of multiple wavelengths towards this side. So it will just redirect in this way. So if the 193.2 terahertz wavelength is coming, then it is diverting in this way, not it is reaching at this point. Okay, so 193.2 wavelength that is modulated at 10 Gbps will come at this point. And here we are using the optical splitter or power splitter. Okay, so this power splitter will just distribute the signal to its 4 ports. And from these 4 ports, again, we use the interleaver as a multiplexing purpose. So this wavelength will combine, so 193.2 terahertz will come at this point. Will also come to the ODN 2, ODN 3, and ODN 4. So all the optical distribution networks or ODNs are able to receive this single wavelength, that is 193.2 terahertz. Okay, so all the users available in the network is able to receive the 193.2 data terahertz wavelength. So we can transmit by using only one transmitter. But what we need to take care for this, definitely we need to take care about the insertion loss, as the signal is distributed at this point also and again at this point also. But we have the option. Okay. And so basically this is the case when the signal is broadcasted at 1 Gbps. So for broadcasting 1 Gbps, what we need to do? So earlier we have 193.9 terahertz wavelength, so now it is 100 gigahertz shifted. So 194 terahertz, it is indicated in green. So this 100 gigahertz interleaver will just divert this wavelength, and it will be distributed to the 4 ports, and it will be accessible to all the optical distribution networks. And similarly, the 10 Gbps broadcasting, as I've already discussed, is also possible. And there is one more interesting aspect or feature of this kind of advanced optical network. It's just by using the special kind of AWG, the AWG which has the port spacing of 4 gigahertz in this particular case. Why? Because the port spacing twice as compared to this AWG. So in this case, the AWG spacing is 200 gigahertz. So that's why we have just considered the 4 gigahertz spacing. In this case, this term, basically there is one term, how many continuous wavelengths or contiguous wavelengths will reach at single port is called as the coarseness factor. So in this case, the coarseness factor is 2. Okay, so what does it mean? So at this point, this 8x1 AWG will combine and multiplex the incoming wavelengths. So here we have the stream of the wavelengths, that is 193.1, 193.3 up to 194.5. And now the central frequency of this AWG, remote mode AWG, is 193.1, but the port spacing is now double. It is twice, 400 gigahertz. Okay, so it means 193.1 wavelengths will reach at this point, then another wavelength will also reach at this point. Okay, then next 2 wavelengths will reach at port 2, then next 2 wavelengths will reach 193.9 and 194.1 at port 3, and then next wavelength 194.3 and 194.5 will reach at the port 4. So now, earlier what was happening, if we just see this case. Okay, so in this case, the black wavelengths are modulated at 10 Gbps and red wavelengths are modulated at 1 Gbps. So each optical distribution network is able to receive up to total 11 Gbps. Okay, now there may be some case, let me just say there are some particular sections in a college. Okay, so this optical distribution network, let's say it is the ECE class, it is the CSE class, it is the electrical engineering class, and it is the civil engineering class, for example. Okay, so there may be some case that at particular point this class requires more data, and at some another time this class required higher data, or it may be applicable for any network, like it may be the banks, it may be in the hospitals, or it may be for any building. But the idea is that we can dynamically change the available bandwidth. Okay, so now what is happening? 2 black wavelengths are coming at port 1. What does it mean? So this optical distribution network 1 is now able to receive up to 20 Gbps data rates. Optical distribution network 2 is able to receive the services up to 20 Gbps data rate, but the optical distribution network 3 and 4 will able to receive only up to 2 Gbps. So basically we can dynamically change the traffic of one distribution network to another distribution network. Okay, now if the center frequency of this AWG is changed to 193.3 terahertz, then what happens? So basically 193.3 terahertz wavelength will come at this point, port 1. Okay, then next wavelength will also come at this point, so 193.3, 193.5, then 193.7, 193.9, then 194.1, 194.3, then 194.5, 193.1. It's the cyclic property. Okay, so now what is happening? The ODN 1 is able to receive 20 Gbps, ODN 2 is able to receive 11 Gbps, ODN 3 is able to receive 2 Gbps and ODN 4 is able to receive the 11 Gbps services. If suppose we need to provide the 20 Gbps services to the ODN 1 and ODN 4, then we'll again change the center frequency to 193.5 terahertz. So basically the bandwidth allocation will be some kind of this 193.57, 193.9, 194.1, 4.3, 4.5, then 193.1, 193.3. So in this case 20 to 20, and similarly we can provide the 11 to 11, 20. Okay, so we can allocate the wavelengths dynamically by changing the center frequency and also by changing the spacing of the AWG. Okay, so this is the broadcasting with coarseness factor. So I think we should move to the next architecture. And this is basically some analysis how we are able to reduce the energy consumption. So basically we have just considered some representative traffic pattern for 24 hours for a week from Sunday to Saturday. So basically the traffic load is heterogeneous, so below certain threshold we will use the 1 Gbps and above certain threshold we will use the 10 Gbps. So just by providing this mechanism we can able to save the energy saving. So basically how the energy is saved by using the 1 Gbps transmitter in place of the 10 Gbps. So there are some racks basically we can say, or some chips that are used or to hold the transmitters. Okay, so the 10 Gbps transmitter can require more power, and as the receiver sensitivity for 1 Gbps transmission is better, so it will also require less power. So basically just by using this formula we are able to reduce approximately 60% of the energy consumption. Okay, so it is the energy saving for a particular week. So definitely this energy saving pattern will change if this traffic load pattern will change. Okay, and similarly we can reduce the cost also. Okay, as the 1 Gbps data rate cost is different as compared to the 10 Gbps data rate. So bandwidth, or we can say the operational cost reduction is also approximately up to 60%. Okay, so then there is another architecture, that is flexible hybrid WDM passive optical network with pay-as-you-go deployment. So basically this pay-as-you-go deployment gives us the opportunity not to pay initially but develop the network, install the network as we grow. Okay, so for any network setup it is basically very difficult to set up the network first and then provide the services. So we can set up the small network, then we start providing services
Okay. Okay, Dr. Amit, we are not getting your voice.
Yes. Now you're getting? Hello?
Now we are getting it.
Yes, actually, there was one call, so my network disconnected.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so initially, what happens for any conventional architecture? We need to develop the architecture initially. Okay, but now in this spatial architecture, what we can do, we can design the architecture as we go. Okay, so for this particular architecture, we have 4 modules: module 1, module 2, module 3, and module 4. So these modules are basically 10 Gbps modules. Okay, and the transmitters are denominated just by TRX11, TRX12, 13, 14 for module 1, TRX21, 22, 23, 24 for module 2, and so on. Okay, and along with this 10G transmitters, we have one 1G transmitter also. Okay, 1 Gbps transmitter also. It is basically indicated outside, but it is inside the module. Okay, so each module, so let's say module 1 has 4 10 Gbps transmitters, one 1 Gbps transmitter. Module 2 has 4 10 Gbps transmitter, one 1 Gbps transmitter, and so on. Okay, so now first let me just discuss the working of this architecture, then we will be able to understand how it is providing us the pay-as-you-go deployment feature and what are some other benefits of the architecture. Okay, so module 1 is multiplexing the wavelengths, 4 wavelengths. So at this point here for this line, we are having wavelength stream that is lambda 11, lambda 12, lambda 13, and lambda 14. Okay, and there is one optical switch. So this optical switch, what it do basically, so this incoming signal may go to this point here and in this way. Is my cursor is visible to you, or my arrow is visible to you, Dr. Sahu?
Yes, your arrow is visible and your slides are also visible.
Okay. Yeah. So what this optical switch do? So the wavelengths may go in this way or it may go in this way. Okay, so similarly we have the module 2. So the path for this module 2 will be something like this. And from here we can have the path towards this optical distribution network 2, or we can have the path to this AWG. And similarly for module 3 and module 4. Okay, and we have this 1G TRX also. So here we have one WDM drop filter basically. So it is used to just separate the wavelength. So either the wavelength will go at this point or it will go at this point. So if the drop wavelength of this WDM filter is similar to the wavelength which is transmitted from this transmitter, then it will be dropped at this port. Otherwise it will go in this way. Okay, so if the wavelength is coming at this point, then again it will reach to the optical switch. Okay, in this case we have not used this WDM drop and 1x4 splitter. I will just explain why we have not used. So basically this transmitter is used for providing the broadcasting facility as well as providing the services at 1 Gbps. Okay, so we are broadcasting only from one transmitter. And now for module 2 1G transmitter, so the wavelength may go to this adder and then it is coming at this point. So for this adder, 2 wavelengths are coming. Okay, one is from here. So basically if the wavelength is broadcasted, then it will come here, and if it is dedicated, then it will come here. So now we'll see these cases differently by different figures. What happens? So now let's say we are providing the service at 10 Gbps. Okay, so in this case the 1 Gbps transmitters are switched off. Okay, So all the 4 transmitters of this module 1 is on, 4 transmitters of module 2 is on, for module 3 and 4 the transmitters are on. So wavelength lambda 11, 12, 13, 14 will come at this point, and if the phase shift of the optical switch is 180, then basically the wavelength will come to this path. Okay, similarly for module 2, the lambda 21, lambda 22, lambda 23, lambda 24 is coming, and as the phase shift of this optical switch is 180, so the wavelengths will come at this point. Similarly, the wavelengths lambda 31, 32, 33, 34 will come at this point. Lambda 41, 42, 43, and 44 will come at this point. Now again, what happens? These 4 wavelengths. Okay, so lambda 11 will come at this point, lambda 12 will come at this point, lambda 13 will come at this point, and lambda 14 will come at this point. Similarly, this lambda 21, so lambda 21 will come at this point, 22 will come at this point, 23 will come at this point, and 24 will come at this point, and so on. So basically, let's say this is one optical distribution network. Okay, the 4 cross 4 AWG, the port 1, which is connected to optical distribution network 1. Okay, so now if we just see this optical network 1 is receiving 4 wavelengths, and these 4 wavelengths are from the 4 different modules. Okay, so the red one, that is lambda 11, that is from the module 1. Lambda 24, that is from the module 2. The lambda 33, that is from the module 3, and lambda 42, that is from the module 4. Similarly, if we just see the case of the optical distribution network 2, then again it is also receiving the 4 wavelengths from 4 different modules. Lambda ODN 3 optical distribution network 3 is also receiving the 4 wavelengths from 4 different modules, and so on. So now, as I told you, the pay as you grow. So basically, let's say initially we have the very low traffic or less number of users. Okay, then we need not to set up the module 2, module 3, and module 4 initially. So let's say only module 1 is installed, and we are just starting the services. Okay. So from this module 1, so the red wavelengths basically. Okay, so lambda 11 is providing the services to optical distribution network 1. Lambda 12 is providing the services to optical distribution network 2. Lambda 13 is for ODN 3. Lambda 14 is for ODN 4. Now, as the number of applications are increasing, let's say, or the users are increasing, the high demand is increasing. Okay, so then another module is installed with 4 transmitters again. So it will transmit lambda 21, lambda 22, lambda 23, and lambda 24. So now this optical distribution network 1 will receive 2 wavelengths. One is lambda 11, another is lambda 24. Similarly, the optical distribution network 2 will receive 1 wavelength lambda 12, another is lambda 21. ODN 3 will receive lambda 13, lambda 22, and similarly ODN 4 will receive lambda 14 and lambda 23. So we are able to receive the 2 wavelengths. Okay, similarly, the further we are growing, the network demand is growing, then we can scale the network by installing the module 3 and module 4 and so on. So when the network is fully scaled, it can provide up to 40 Gbps. So basically each wavelength is transmitted at 10 Gbps. So 4 wavelengths, so we can provide the wavelength services up to 40 Gbps for a particular optical distribution network. Okay, now what happens, let's say the network is not fully utilized, but we have scaled. Okay, and at some particular point, let me just move, this is the upstream transmission. Yes, So at some particular time, let's say only this module 1 is on and module 2, 3, 4 are off. Okay. And at some particular time, either this module is failed or this link is failed. There may be some fault or there may be some any reason. Then just by turning on this module 2, we can definitely provide the services to the users. Okay, so this kind of network is also able to provide the very much reliability. Very much means if module 1 failed, then services can be provided at module 2, 3, 4. So 3 another modules are available. Okay, if the network is operating at 20 Gbps, it means already these 2 modules are on, and if one module is failed, then basically we have another 2 choices. If we are providing the services at 30 Gbps, and if any one of the module is failed, then we have still one module. Okay, so we have very good reliability. And for lower data rates, the reliability is up to 300%. 300% means we are providing the services up to 10 Gbps by using this module 1. And if this failed, then we can provide the service at module 2. If module 2 is also failed or link 2 is also failed, then we can provide the services at module 3. If this is also failed, then we can provide the services at this module or this link. But it will not happen basically if the network is installed properly. Okay, so this is the upstream transmission. Yes, and if we just consider the phase shift of the switch is 0 as 0. Earlier it was 180. Now if this phase shift of the switch is 0, then what happens? These 4 wavelengths will come this way and will come this way in this year. So let's say there is some particular point for which ODN2, ODN3 and ODN4, these optical distribution networks are not there. Or let's say there are 4 classes again, EC, CSE, electrical, civil, and there is some class for only EC students, and there is no class for the other students. Okay, so we need not to provide any wavelengths to these distribution networks. Okay, so then what we can do, and suppose the bandwidth demand for the optical distribution network 1 is up to 40 Gbps, then rather switching these 4 modules, what we can do, we just switch the phase shift of this switch to 0. So basically the 4 wavelengths that are coming, earlier it was going in this way that lambda 11, lambda 12, lambda 13 and lambda 14. Now all these 4 wavelengths are coming to optical distribution network 1. Okay, so we can provide the services to only one ODN, or we can say we may provide the services just by dedicated module. So module 1 is dedicated for ODN 1, module 2 is dedicated for ODN 2, and so on. There is another benefit of this mechanism. So basically this 4x4 AWG is not used at all. So the whatever somewhat insertion losses that is occurring due to the AWG will not be there. Okay, so we further reduce the transmitted strength of the signal. And we have the another important feature by using this advanced architecture. So suppose a particular class at some particular instant require up to 70 Gbps data rate or very high data rate, then what we can do, we need to switch on all the 4 modules as all the distribution network are utilizing the services. Okay, but optical distribution network 1 is utilizing very high data rate services. Then what we can do, so the phase shift of the optical switch is 0 for this optical switch 1. It means the 4 wavelengths that is coming from module 1 will come towards this way, and it will reach to optical distribution network 1. And now this phase shift for the optical switch 2, 3, and 4 is 180 degrees. So these 4 wavelengths will come at this point. It means it will go through AWG. These wavelengths will also go through AWG. These wavelengths will also go through AWG. So now these 4 wavelengths will be distributed one at each port. So lambda 2, lambda 24. Okay, so lambda 24 from module 2 will come here. Similarly, lambda 33 from module 3 will come to ODN1, and similarly lambda 42 from module 4 will come to ODN1. So in this case, optical distribution network 1 is able to receive 7 wavelengths, or it is able to provide the services up to 70 Gbps, while the other 3 optical distribution network will be able to provide these services up to 30 Gbps. So basically, we can have some dynamic bandwidth allocation depending on the network condition, timing, requirement. We can tune or we can switch. We can gain the reliability also. Okay, and this is the case for the architecture which is operating at 1 Gbps. So earlier we have seen the 10 Gbps transmission. So now for 1 Gbps, so these 10 Gbps transmitters are off. Okay, 1 Gbps transmitters are on. So in this case, what happens? The WDM drop wavelength is somewhat other than the transmitter wavelength. It means we can say the WDM drop filter wavelength is not lambda 1. Okay, then this lambda 1 will go to this point and will come to this switch. Similarly, this lambda 2 will come to this switch, lambda 3 will come to this switch, and lambda 4 will come to this switch. Okay, and as the phase shift of the switch is 180, so lambda 1 will come to this way and this way, lambda 2 will come to this way and this way, and similarly the lambda 4 will come this way and this way. So now in this case, each network, each optical distribution network is able to receive the wavelength at 1 Gbps. And now suppose we want to broadcast the signal by using single wavelength to all the available users in the network, then what we need to do? So now in this case, the drop filter wavelength is kept as lambda 1. Okay, other 1G transmitters are off, as we are broadcasting from only one transmitter, that is 1 Gbps transmitter of module 1. Okay, so this lambda 1 will come at this point, and this 1x4 splitter will simply distribute to the 4 points, and from here this wavelength will go, lambda 1 wavelength will go to all the switches. Okay, and from this switch the service will go to the optical distribution network 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now using only one wavelength, that is lambda 1 from the module 1 and at 1 Gbps, we are able to serve all the available users inside the network. Okay. So I think we should move to the next part, that is the direct inter-ONU communication. Okay, I'm just skipping this. Yes. So there is another aspect, that is the direct inter-ONU communication or the optical network units intercommunication. So please turn off your mic. Someone has turned on it. Yes, thank you. Please turn off the mic. किसी का mic on है, please.
Okay, participants, please turn off your mics. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so basically this is the generalized PON. So what happens? I'm just giving you what happens in the conventional case and what happens for the direct inter-ONU communication. Okay, so we have the central office or OLT, from where we transmit the data, then the fiber, then basically this fiber back grating it is not there. Okay, then power splitter. So what happens, we want to serve the optical networking units or users, then we'll simply transmit the signal from the central office. So signal will go this way and then it will be distributed to all the users. Okay, now suppose, so this is called as the downstream transmission. Okay, and if there is some upstream transmission, then definitely we have, so this ONU1, ONU2 or ONU3 will transmit, so it will go and it will go to this. Okay, now but let's say what happens when ONU1 want to communicate with ONU2 or ONU3. So conventionally what is required, this ONU1 will first transmit the data as upstream, it will use the upstream bandwidth, then it will reach to the central office, then central office will again remodulate and redirect it towards the destined user. Okay, so basically in this case what is happening, the signal is first going from this optical network 1 to central office. So basically in this case the signal has to traverse this large distance optical fiber for this way, and again this OLT will transmit the data for the destined ONU. So again the signal has to travel to this optical fiber. Okay, so if there is some way, if we can avoid the transmission of data from this optical fiber, this large optical fiber, and if we just redirect the signal from this point only or remote node only, then it will be very good. Okay, so for this we can use fiber Bragg grating. Okay, so fiber Bragg grating is basically nothing but it is the Bragg filter, we can say, or there are some periodic refractive index changes in the optical fiber, and it reflects particularly at some particular wavelength that satisfy the Bragg wavelength. So Bragg wavelength is nothing but it is to delta n effective. So basically there will be some effective refractive index inside the FBG, and there will be some particular period of to higher refractive index, we can say. Okay, so I will not talk more about the FBG as I am just considering it as component. So let's say ONU1 want to communicate with other ONUs. Okay, then what happens? So let's say this FBG has some particular Bragg wavelength and it is lambda 5. Okay, so this ONU1 will transmit at lambda 5. So what happens? The signal will come to this way, it will come to this way, and now as the Bragg wavelength of this FBG is lambda 5 and signal transmitted at lambda 5, so this signal will just simply reflect it. It will come again here, and now it will go to all the ports again. Okay, so ONU2 will be able to receive, ONU3 will be able to receive, or ONU N or K will be able to receive. Okay, so now in this case, what we have done, we have modulated data only once at this point. We have used only one bandwidth. We can say it is the upstream wavelength, or in inter-ONU we can say. Okay, and as the signal is not reaching at the central office, so we can say there will be some kind of data security also. Okay, so now in this case what happens, this is the one stage formed with inter-ONU connecting capability. It means only one remote node is there. Okay, so in this case the inter-ONU is possible with all the ONUs available in the network. So suppose this is the case for some college. Okay, college has n branches, EC, CSE, electrical, civil, and if ONU1 is transmitting the data for some particular branch, but it will come to this star coupler or power splitter, then it will come to this FBG and it will come back, reflected back, and reach to all the students. Okay, of all the branches. So for some students it may be useful, and for another students it may not be useful. Okay, so now by designing two-stage phone, what we can do? So OLT, then fiber, then FBG, then remote node 1, and then FBG, and then remote node 2. Okay, so if the signal is reflected from this FBG, so suppose lambda 1 want to, let's say it is ECE class. Okay, this is the class for electronics and communication engineering students. So if there is some message for the ECE class, then basically a particular student or user of this group has to transmit the data on the wavelength which is equal to the Bragg wavelength for this FBG. Okay, so the signal will come to this point, then come to this point, and then again it is reflected and will come to this point. So basically this is called as the intra-ONU communication. We can say the direct communication between ONUs within the same group. Okay, and if the particular user or student of this group want to communicate with all the students of the university or other departments as well, then what happens? These students will transmit the data at the wavelength which basically satisfy the Bragg wavelength of this FBG. So this FBG has some different wavelength, and this FBG has some different wavelength. So what happens if this user transmits the wavelength at wavelength which satisfy the Bragg wavelength of this FBG, then the signal will go to this way, and then it will come to this way. And as the signal comes at this point, then it will be reflected back. So it will come to this point also, this point also, this point also, and then it will be distributed or broadcasted to all the ONUs. So now in this direct ONU communication, basically we are not transmitting the data to this single mode fiber, or we are not transmitting the data to the central office or OLT. So basically we can save the bandwidth as only one side bandwidth is used. We can save the latency as the single mode fiber transmission is avoided, and we can also save some complex processing at the central office. Okay, so this is the example for downstream transmission. So let's say there are some users. So OLT is transmitting at lambda 1, 2, 3, 4, and this FBG has the wavelength lambda 9 Bragg wavelength, and this has the Bragg wavelength lambda 5. Okay, so for the downstream transmission, the lambda 1, 2, 3, 4, so it will come to this way. If there are the star couplers or optical splitters, then all four wavelengths lambda 1, 2, 3, 4, lambda 1, 2, 3, 4, and similarly again this will distribute lambda 1, 2, 3, 4, lambda 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. Okay, now for inter-ONU communication. So in this case, upstream and inter-ONU communication is indicated. So let's say the signal is transmitted at lambda 5, at lambda 9, and at lambda 10. So now first we will talk about the lambda 10. What happens to lambda 10? So the wavelength that transmitted on lambda 10 will come to this point, and as it will not match the Bragg wavelength, it will come to this point, then it will come to this point. This FBG also not match the lambda 10s, so the signal will reach at this point. So this is the procedure for the upstream transmission. And suppose for transmitting within this group, so as this wavelength and this FBG has the lambda 5, so the signal transmitted at lambda 5 will come to this point and then communicated within this group. And similarly, the signals transmitted at lambda 9 will come to this point and then reflected from this point, so it will be communicated with all the users. Okay. Just wait. So for WDM multiplexing also we can use this direct inter-ONU communication, as nowadays we require the very high and dedicated wavelengths, very high bandwidth services. So we can also use the direct inter-ONU communication with WDM multiplexing. Okay, so again for WDM multiplexing, so depending on the number of users or ONUs, we require the number of transmitters. So let's say there are n number of users, let ONU1, ONU2 up to ONU-n. Okay, so the OLT we use the n transmitters. So from this OLT, let's say this is for 8 users. Okay, so we require the 8 transmitters at this point. So these are transmitting the wavelengths 193.1, 193.2 terahertz up to 193.8 terahertz. So now this AWG, what it will do, it will just separate these wavelengths 193.1, 193.2 up to 193.8. Okay. Again, in this case, we have used 150 gigahertz interleaver, so we'll talk later. So this 193.1 wavelengths will simply come at this point, and it will provide the dedicated downstream services to optical network 1. And 193.2 will provide the services to ONU2 and so on. And similarly, by transmitting 193.4.7, 194.8 and so on wavelengths, we can transmit the upstream transmission. So if 194.7 will be there, wavelength that is transmitted from ONU1, it will come at this point and it will go here, and then it will come here, and this circulator will circulate the wavelength and it will be detected at this point. Okay, now how the inter-ONU communication is possible for the WDM. So let's say this ONU8 want to transmit the inter-ONU communication. Okay, so as you can see here, we have some interleavers. Okay, so these interleavers are connected to this 8x8 splitter. Okay, there are 8 interleavers. These are connected to 8x8 power splitter. Okay, so now in place of 195.4, the transmitted wavelength is tuned by 50 gigahertz. It means it is now transmitted at 194.45 terahertz. So this wavelength will come at this point. Now again, this interleaver is 50 gigahertz interleaver. Okay, so the 50 gigahertz tuned wavelength will come towards this side. Okay, so 195.45 will come at this point, and it is applied to the 8x8 splitter. So again, this splitter will split the signal to all the output ports. So from these ports, it will be reachable to all the available users. Okay, so there is one limitation of this, as the dedicated inter-ONU transmission is not possible. Dedicated means, suppose ONU8 want to communicate with ONU1 only or with ONU2 only. Okay, it is not possible in this architecture. And as we require the broadcasting also. So can we achieve the broadcasting with the inter-ONU communication architecture? So yes, let me give. Okay, so these 8 wavelengths 193.1, 193.2 up to 193.8, these are multiplexed by 8x1 multiplexer, and then we again use one CWDM, coarse wavelength division multiplexer. So basically there are 2 kind of WDM multiplexing. One is DWDM, dense wavelength division multiplexing, and another is coarse wavelength division multiplexing. So DWDM multiplexing will be there in these signals, and this signal is basically somewhat separated by higher wavelength spacing. So this will apply to the CWDM. So now it will multiplex, now again transmitted by the 20 kilometer optical fiber. Now what happens at this point, 193.1, 193.2 up to 193.8, and then another wavelength that is lambda VD here. So lambda VD, what does it indicate? It is D indicate the downstream transmission and V indicate the broadcasting. So it is nothing but simply a particular wavelength. So it may if we have the separation of this CWDM at, let's say, 194.0, okay, then this lambda BD, it may be 194.1. So up to the wavelengths 194.0 will go towards this side, and the wavelengths that are greater than the 194.0 will come towards this side. So lambda BD will come towards this side. Okay, and this star Kepler is of 8 plus 1 into 8 plus 1, or n plus 1 into n plus 1 for n users. Okay, so now this wavelength will be distributed to all the ports. So basically, in this particular architecture, we can have the dedicated services like 193.1, 193.2, 193.8. We have the broadcasting services as it is reachable to all the ONEs, and we can have the inter-ONE communication. How? So let's say it is transmitting, so it will come to this way and this way, then